Christian parenting.
Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Thurling. I'm the Executive Director of Christian Parenting, a mom of 3, and I am so glad that you're here. This is a place where you can bring your real self, no matter what that looks like today, and be given the space, resources, and encouragement you need to set aside perfection and grow into the perfectly imperfect parent God made you to be. There are some people that you meet and you just click right away. And for me, our guest today, Jennifer Dukesley, is one of those people. So we have a ton of mutual friends from a writing group that we're a part of and just the writing world in general. But we've never had the opportunity to meet until now, and we became fast friends. Today, Jennifer and I talk about vulnerability in parenting. She has a guided journal out called Stuff I'd Only Tell God, a guided journal of courageous honesty, obsessive truth-telling, and beautifully ruthless self-discovery. So I get to ask her, why is it so hard to be vulnerable with other parents? How can we be fully vulnerable with God, and how can that change our parenting? And we talk about the art of journaling, which I'm not very good at, but I really think that this journal is going to be my key to success, but we'll see. This journal is different. It's fun and deep at the same time. It's challenging and lighthearted. It has a variety of prompts, so it's really, really great for someone who's new to journaling or someone who's a pro. So stay tuned at the end of the episode, and you can hear a few sample rapid fire questions pulled straight from the journal. I really hope that you enjoy Jennifer as much as I do. Hi, Jennifer. I'm so glad we're here together today.
This is fun. I feel like we could make like a 3-hour podcast with all that we have in common, and we're just like besties, long lost besties. I already know it.
I think so too. So Jennifer and I have never met until this moment. But we have a lot of mutual friends in the writing world that we live in. And so there's just a lot of connections. We just connected a little bit before we started recording, and now we could just talk forever, I think. So it's going to be fun.
We could. Yeah. So fasten your seatbelts, listeners, because you just don't know where this is going to go.
Yeah. But it's going to be fun. We promise you that.
Yeah.
Okay. But before we get going, I want to learn more about you. So can you tell us about your family, who's in it, and then just one word or phrase to describe them?
So in my family, I have my husband, Scott, and he is a 5th-generation farmer. We live on a farm in Northwest Iowa, and we're growing corn and soybeans and pigs, and also 2 people. We've raised 2 people in addition to all those other things. And that we have girls. We have 2 daughters. One is a junior in college, and one just finished her freshman year in college. And love being a mom of daughters. We're great friends. It's been wonderful to get to this point in parenting and feel like we've given them roots here on the farm, but we've also given them wings. Our older daughter is studying at Oxford right now as we speak in the UK. And then our younger daughter is real close to leaving for a couple months in Guatemala, serving on mission there. So roots and wings. And we're experiencing a lot of the wings right now, which leaves our nest quite empty. I would say, I love your question about finding that one word. I'd love to know the one word other people would pick, but the one that immediately came to mind is eclectic. Excuse me. Eclectic because of, just our broad interests and, quirky personalities and just embracing that. I just love it.
I love hearing about having grown kids. I've had multiple people on this podcast who have entered the empty nest phase, and I just adore when they talk about the relationship they have with their adult kids and how much they love this season. Because I think we're kind of almost like trained to fear it as parents. And then I hear all these people who love it, and it just gives me so much hope and excitement for the future. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, I love it. I hope you do too. It took a minute to figure it out.
Well, yeah.
At night, Scott and I are like, how are we going to do this thing? We can't just sit around and watch TV every night. But, our time was so filled with bleachers and games and concerts and all the kids' activities. And when that goes away, you really do have to adjust. But it also gives you a new kind of freedom, which is super fun.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, let's go out to eat tonight. All right. And then the next night we might do the same thing. We go out to eat way too much. I'll tell you that.
Well, I think that's okay for this season. That's what it's there for. I'm in the bleacher season, so you can go out to eat for me.
I will do that.
Yeah. Okay. And then I also always ask everybody, what is one thing that you want every parent to know?
I think I'll speak from the perspective of being on this side of parenting now. And what I'd want every parent to know is that you are doing better than you know. I think that in the thick of it, we don't know because we don't know what we don't know. Like, I remember saying to the girls when they wanted to start dating, for instance, I don't know because I've never parented a 16-year-old before, or I don't know because I've never had to make a decision on whether you should have an iPhone yet. And I've never parented a 17-year-old before, or I never had parented through a pandemic before. And when I said that, it gave me a kind of grace that I needed for parenting. And it also said to my girls, I don't have this all figured out, but I'm trying. And so that would be my advice to people is like, you're doing better than you know. You've never done this part of parenting before, even if you have 10 kids, because, you don't become an expert until you're in it. So, you're doing better than you know.
I feel like you're speaking to my heart today because to be vulnerable, because we're going to talk about being vulnerable as a parent today, but to be vulnerable, I had kind of like an emotional parenting moment where I'm like, what am I doing? Emotional parenting morning where I've just been questioning what I'm doing and do I know what I'm doing? Am I totally messing everything up? And it's been one of those days. So that was the encouragement that I needed. So I hope that somebody else is getting what they need too. So thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
We are going to talk about vulnerability today because you have a new journal out and I love it. It's called Stuff I'd Only Tell God, which is just a great title. But then your subtitle is even better because it's a guided journal of courageous honesty, obsessive truth-telling, and beautifully ruthless self-discovery. I love it. It's so descriptive.
Yeah. I wrote that on the couch while watching a TV show, actually. It was a Wednesday night. And I'm like, Scott was very deep into Survivor. We watched Survivor. And we were very deep into Survivor. And I'm like, Scott, pause it. I know what the subtitle is. And I love it too. It's kind of weird. It's quirky. It creates intrigue and interest. And it perfectly describes what the journal is.
Yeah, because it's a unique journal. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about that. But I do want to start talking first about the subject of vulnerability, both with other parents and with God, because I think it's really hard for us to be vulnerable about anything in our lives. And I think it's really hard when it comes to our kids and our parenting, because kind of like you said before, like we all doubt what we're doing. And so we don't want to admit that we don't know what we're doing or that we feel lonely or unequipped or whatever it is that we're feeling in that day. Like it just is hard to be vulnerable with other people and say like, I'm totally overwhelmed. And so I'm curious on the other side of parenting from where I am, like, why do you think it's so hard to be vulnerable as a parent?
I think that we have an idea that as moms, like it should just come natural. Like our bodies were made to birth children, and not for everybody, I understand, but we get the idea that it's been done for generations.
Right.
This is how God created it, and we should just sort of have that quote mother's instinct in knowing what to do. And when and it starts when they're babies. Like I was, even when the girls were young, I was like keeping charts on. Are they pooping enough? Are they peeing enough? Am I feeding them right? Should I be doing the sleep training thing? Or should I have them, just sleep when they want to sleep? And it feels vulnerable to ask other people because number one, a lot of people have big opinions.
Yes.
And if we're vulnerable, they know what, they can, it almost feels like they can kind of pick at your weaknesses a little bit. So I think we have to be really careful about who we're vulnerable with. I remember a time when I had the two girls and I was really overwhelmed and I had postpartum depression. And I was like, how can this be? Because I definitely did not have it with the first, but I did with the second. Mm-hmm. And I remember being vulnerable with a woman who could have been the girls' grandmothers. grandmother and telling her how I was so worn out and so unsure of myself. And it was a vulnerable moment for me because I just didn't know how she was going to respond. And the next day, she showed up on my doorstep with a card and with like a casserole, probably, because that's what people do in Iowa. We just bring food to other people, like a church
casserole form. Yeah.
Casserole. We love each other through casserole forms, yes. And I think you do that in Minnesota too.
Oh, yeah, we do, for sure.
And so she brought this casserole and a card, and she sat with me for an hour, and she held the baby, and she just encouraged me. And had I not been vulnerable, I would have not received that love and assurance from somebody who had walked through my shoes. But I do think that we have to be, careful about the kind of people that we're vulnerable with. But when we do get there, like if we're vulnerable with our peers, not just somebody who's older, but if we're vulnerable with our peers, it really gives them permission to be vulnerable too. And suddenly, relationships just go deeper. When I say to you, Steph, I am scared about being an empty nester. I don't know what this is going to look like. And then, the next week, you think, I can talk to Jennifer about how hard it is to have a really tough morning like you had this morning, because we've established trust through vulnerability. But I'm not saying it's easy, but that taking risks toward vulnerability is what deepens relationships and makes you feel less alone.
As a working mom, 2 of my goals for the new year are to take better care of myself and simplify. And one of the ways I'm doing that is with HelloFresh. There's a reason HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. They make it so simple. All I have to do is pick my meals and my delivery date, and all of the pre-portioned ingredients and step-by-step instructions come right to my door. That means less hassle, less wasted food, and they have health-forward options like over 30 calorie-smart and protein-smart recipes each week. The recipe cards are easy to follow and they're full of pictures, so it makes cooking with my kids really fun too. And we all know that when they are involved in the cooking, they're more likely to eat it, so everyone wins. We have a great deal for you right now because I know that mornings can be crazy as a parent. I often find myself forgetting breakfast or grabbing something really fast. But you can go to hellofresh.com/CPPodcastFree and use the code CPPodcastFree for free breakfast for life. That's 1 breakfast item per box while the subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at hellofresh.com/CPPodcastFree with the code CPPodcastFree. And what about those boundaries and being careful with who you're vulnerable with? Like, how do you think what's the best way to establish boundaries around that? Because once I start sharing, once I get vulnerable, I'm a notorious oversharer. I will tell you everything. So, but you do have to be careful with who you share stuff with, right? How have you found that?
Yeah, I'm an oversharer too. So I tend to learn by mistakes. Maybe I won't tell that person next time how this feels. But I don't think, I wouldn't want to overshare something that was deeply personal or private that I didn't know, can I trust this person? Just the same kind of ways, these are my people. These are my A-list friends. These are the people who got my back. You can generally share with those people. But, if you're just moving into a new community or you're just entered a different season of life, you're a new mom and you're trying to find your way with other new moms, it's hard. But I think, just in the same way we don't, we have some amount of mother instinct. We do have some amount of friend instinct too. And you can find those people who you are really clicking with and who seem open to your vulnerability, who ask the question, how are you doing? And then stick around long enough to actually hear the answer that you have if it's not fine. But it's so case by case,
Yeah.
There's been different times where I've thought I could trust people with really vulnerable parts of my story, only to realize later that's how they could hurt me. Like if they know my softest, most vulnerable places, that's the places they could poke at, and it hurts.
Yeah. I feel like I learned a lot about being vulnerable and sharing in regards to parenting, sitting around a MOPS table. with moms who are in close to my same stage with the mentor mom where we're encouraged to share. So I feel like that's always a safe place to start. Like a parenting group is always good.
That's really good, Steph. I had forgotten about that because I've been so far outside of MOPS, and that was a lifeline for me.
Yeah, totally.
The MOPS groups, and we could send our kids off to the little MOPS. The Moppets, is that what they were called?
Moppets, it was called Moppets.
Yeah, and so you could send your kids off and, you could actually have a real conversation with people. I think I cried every other Thursday. That's when our meetings were. Yeah. And that was such a sweet and tender time. So yes, women, parents listening, get yourself into a parenting group.
Yeah, for sure. That's where, and I'm still friends with so many of the friends that I met in MOPS and in those groups. So they are sweet communities. Yeah. Okay, so we know that it's easy for us to judge. We are human. We look at the outside, but God looks at the heart. And no matter what you don't want to share with other people, God already knows. And he's not surprised, and he loves you anyway. So in your experience, how do you think being completely honest with God has made you a better parent?
That is such a great question. My level of honesty has deepened over the years, the further I got into parenting. So they were on parallel tracks, right? And so, my kids have seen since they've been young, me being honest with God. And that has looked like, I had a prayer journal. And my girls, when they were just learning how to write, I gave them little tiny notebooks and they had their own prayer journals. And it was important for me to model honesty with God in my prayers, but to give them permission to do the same. Girls, tell God what scares you. Tell God your worries. Share your gratitude. So they kept gratitude lists. So we were honest with the things that we were praising him for, and we were honest with the things that hurt. And as a mom, that also looked like praying daily with my girls, and that developed in them the prayer habit of being honest with God. So every single morning when I would drive down this driveway, we have a long driveway, and the bus would come to the end of the driveway because we live in the country, we would pray all the way down the driveway. And we would each take turns being honest before God about what was happening in our day. And, there's certain things, obviously, that I couldn't say in front of my girls, but I was trying to model honesty for them so that they would learn to be honest with their questions. And also that they would be honest about the things that frustrated them in the Bible. I ran across a blog post that I wrote in 2010 or 11 the other day, and I took a screenshot of it and sent it to Lydia. She was asking, why would God make Abraham? Why would God make Abraham take Isaac up on that mountain?
It's a great question.
Yeah, why? What kind of God is that? Yeah. And I realized in that moment that I had been parenting my children toward honesty with God. And there's a lot of things I haven't done right as a parent, but I have modeled asking the questions. And I have been very open-handed with theirs. So in moments when my girls have said to me, I just don't think God listens to my prayers. Or how do we even know that Jesus is real? Or what does this really say about the character of God that he would allow these things to happen? I literally have decided, I am not going to freak out when my kids ask those kinds of questions. And I believe that my reception toward their honesty and my own honesty with God has helped in the parenting, so that even now they are coming to me with really hard questions like, Mom, I don't know what to think about this particular social issue. And I don't know how that matches up with scripture and how it matches up with how I'm feeling in my heart. We talk about how we vote. We talk about our own behaviors. Now it's all ramped up at a new level, and we've created a foundation of honesty with God so that we continue to have these critically important conversations with our grown daughters.
I feel like that probably provides so much freedom too as a parent, knowing that you don't have to have all the answers when they come and ask you questions, because they're obviously getting harder. The questions are getting harder as they get older and have bigger thoughts and stuff. But there's just so much freedom in that, and being like, God has this. Let's go to God with this because He's ready for you. That's
absolutely. Awesome. And, that's always been my default answer is, just talk to God about it. And there are things that maybe my daughters and I don't see eye to eye on, for instance. But I always tell them there are well-meaning Christian people that come down on different sides of various issues or various theologies. Everything from baptism to dating to how you dress to whether women should be in leadership and all those kinds of things. And I'm just always telling the girls, those are like the second discourse things. Those are the secondary things. It doesn't mean they aren't important, but just don't lose sight of the fact that Jesus died on the cross for you. Don't lose sight that He rose 3 days later. Don't lose sight that He is sitting at the right hand of God, the Father Almighty. And don't lose sight that He gave you His Holy Spirit to guide you, to make good decisions, to convict you. Those are the main things. And so as parents, we're trying to keep the main thing the main thing. And that opens up the opportunity for honest conversations with God and honest conversations with each other around all of those myriad discussion topics.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of touched a little bit on this earlier when you were saying that you always kept a journal and then encouraged your girls to. And before we started recording, I told you I am not a good journaler. Like, I buy the journals because they're pretty and I like patterns and pretty things. But then they're all like blank lines and I don't do it. But I want to be a good journaler. And I already told you, I think that your book is like my ticket to doing it. But you wrote whole journals. Like, why do you think, tell me what journaling has meant to you in your faith and your parenting. It obviously means a lot.
Yeah. And so interestingly, a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have actually described myself as a journaler because I had an idea of what a journal was supposed to be. And it was, a real journaler started with a blank page. A real journaler could write brilliant prose at the drop of a hat. A real journaler could then take their beautiful penmanship and put it out on Instagram for all to see. A real journaler's thoughts were complete and full, and you could even just turn it right into a blog post because they're just that good. And so I had this idea that that's what journaling was.
I think I've had that idea too, because you're describing it and I'm like, that is what I think, and none of those things are me.
Yeah. And then I started to look around, Steph, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I am a journaler. And here's how I know. I keep up to 5 or 6 different kinds of journals at all times.
Oh, wow.
So for instance, I have stuff I'd only tell God, right? That's a guided journal. It asks specific questions that are serious and that are quirky and deep and not so deep. But even before I had created that journal, I have a prayer journal. Right now, I have a praying the scriptures over my daughter's journal. So it's by Jody Burnt, and I go through and I pray the scriptures over them specifically. I have a gratitude journal where I write down a few things I'm thankful for every day. I have something called a commonplacing journal. And a commonplacing journal is based in either the 16th or 17th century, where they would write down quotes of things that they heard or had read, and they wanted to keep an ongoing list of those. So I have that right here beside me. I also have a journal where I collect memories and stories that I might use in future books and blog posts and social media posts. They're very interesting little tidbits. But I mean, I guess all that to say, over the years, I've kept all these journals. Like, making a list counts as journaling. Writing down in your journal, like, these are the things I did today, and they're just one thing after another. That counts as journaling. It doesn't have to be some, brilliant revelation from the Lord. Most of us are just living daily, ordinary lives that deserve to be noted and remembered. And at the end of the day, to just sit back and say, this is what happened today. And there's value in this. It's a really important practice, I think, for us to just sort of declutter our minds, lay it all down before the Lord, and be able to rest at night and get up and do the same thing tomorrow. It's a healing practice. Therapists and counselors, I'm not one of those, but they will tell you that therapists and counselors will tell you that journaling is a therapeutic process that you can use toward your healing. And I believe it because I've experienced it in my life.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about your journal, because your journal that you wrote, which is your one of 5 that you're going through right now. And it's really fun because it is guided, and it has a variety of different prompts from, like you said, faith-filled to bring you closer to God. And then also some that are silly and just kind of getting to know yourself better. I loved it. And it's just a variety too. So you're not going to get bored or overwhelmed with it. So I want to end by asking you a few quick fire questions that are straight from your journal. So I don't know if you've answered all of them in your journal yet, but I'm going to ask you a few of your favorites and least favorites.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready?
You betcha.
Favorite way to cook an egg?
Okay. It's over easy. And I spray the pan with Pam, and I drop 2 eggs in, and I put the lid in. So it's kind of steams them. And then just right when they turn from yellow, just a bit of white over the top, they're done.
That's like very specific cooking instructions.
It's very specific. It is the only way to make an egg.
Okay. Well, so then what's your least favorite?
Like hard, like a fried hard. Like,
okay.
I mean, I like a hard-boiled egg, but I don't want my fried egg that way.
That's fair. I don't like a deviled egg. No, thank you.
Oh.
Not my favorite.
All right. I think I like all eggs except a hard fried egg.
Okay. Yeah, that's not the best. Okay, favorite chore.
My favorite chore is, I don't like very many chores. I like tidying the kitchen at night.
Ooh.
Because in the next morning I can come back in and it's all just ready for the day.
There is such a huge regret when you decide you're too tired to do that. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, that was silly of me. I should have tidied my kitchen. That's a good one. Okay, least favorite?
Least favorite chore is folding and putting away laundry.
100%. Me too. My laundry room's a disaster at all times. Of clean
I'd rather
clothes.
clean the toilet than put away laundry.
I actually don't mind cleaning a bathroom, but the laundry, it's always clean in mountains. And I'm like, all right, kids, just grab it, because that's where we're at.
Maybe we should just have that, like just a room, a mountain, where you just put all the clothes. Like that's just the clothes room, and they're just in piles. Why not?
And then everything's wrinkled. And I don't like ironing either. So my husband's like, I don't think you see wrinkles. And I'm like, I don't. And if I do, I just ignore them. Okay. Favorite distraction?
Probably vacation.
It's a good one.
Like
Fair.
the whole thing. Just like get out of here, get out of town, get out of the country, make myself my way toward a beach and be perfectly contentedly distracted.
That's a good one. Least favorite?
Least favorite distraction is social media. And I use it way too much. I just don't like that that's my distraction at times.
Yeah, I think social media is my favorite and least favorite at the same time.
That's a good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely my go-to.
Yeah.
But I see the harm that it causes.
For sure. I think everyone in their car is like, yes. Favorite scent?
Favorite scent?
Yep.
The scent of, I've got 2 right now.
Okay.
Lilacs, because they're just in bloom right now, and it just brings me back home. And the scent of Stetson, which my father just passed away in September, and that's what he wore. So it reminds me of Dad.
That's a good one. Least favorite?
Skunk. And we get them a lot out here.
Yes, that's a good one. Okay, favorite holiday?
I like Easter.
It's just,
you get to focus on Christ, at a high level like you would at Christmas, but without all of the other distractions.
Yes, that is also my favorite holiday for the same reasons. And 4th of July.
It.
Okay, least favorite.
Oh, least favorite. I think that it's probably Labor Day because it feels like the end of summer. And it just makes me sad. Like, I'm not ready to just always get back into the swing of things like when the girls were in school, or, now it means that the girls are back to college and I won't get to see them for a while. So I like the day itself, but I just don't like what it signals is coming.
That's
winter.
fair. Okay. And then last one, I'm going to add this one on because of that favorite season.
My favorite season.
Because we're from the Midwest. We get all the seasons.
Yes, we do, which is beautiful. And, my most recent book before this one is Growing Slow, where I show the value of each of those seasons on a farm and how we would do well to embrace each of those seasons within us, even winter. Mm-hmm. Right now, I would say that my favorite season is spring. And I have felt it more so this year, I think, than I have in a really long time because our winter was exceptionally long. It is so long. Steph, when I was up in your state, we're recording this in May, and I was in your state a few days ago, and there was a big parking garage, and there was still a ginormous pile of snow on the north side of that parking garage. I'm like, what is even happening here?
Yes.
Like in May, it was huge. It was like 2 stories tall on the parking garage. I couldn't believe it.
Yes. For those of you who are not in the Midwest or the state of Minnesota, the great state of Minnesota, we had a rough winter.
It was rough.
We had snow way too late. We were not okay, but spring is here and we're okay now.
We're okay.
We are okay. And least favorite?
I will refuse to say winter because I have become a winter evangelist. And there is little doubt that we have to go through winter seasons here and also in our lives. And there's something that we get to learn inside winter. And so that said, I really honestly don't have a least favorite season. I would just have to leave it blank. Spring is my favorite, but the others are just kind of all tied.
That's fair. That's fair. There is something beautiful in every season, even the hard ones, in weather and life. So
that's right.
That is fair. Yeah. Okay, that was super fun. Thank you. So that gives everyone just like a little snippet of what your journal's like. Like there's super fun things in there. So you can just, it's like an adventure in a journal.
It is. I loved putting it together. And in fact, my daughters were very much a part of it, of coming up with some of the questions. There's silly things like that, but then there's like really serious questions, like where you talk about the scars on your body. And then you talk about the scars on your soul. What are things that God has healed in your life? What is He still healing in your life? There's sections where you go through your fears and your worries. There's sections where you record your gratitudes. There's sections where you think about your future. There's sections made specifically for dreaming. So I'm really excited about what this journal can mean for people. And I think as parents, it's a good way to do a little bit of self-care in a way that doesn't feel like extremely time-consuming or expensive. Yeah. I also know, Steph, a lot of moms who are buying the journal to go do it in conjunction with their high school or junior high age daughter, which it would be appropriate
for sure.
For that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's been really cool to see, and some spouses doing it together. So yeah. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with your podcast in particular because of who your audience is. And I hope if they pick it up, they love it. So thanks for having me talk about it.
Yeah. Well, even the questions we just went through, those favorites and least favorites, that's a great thing to do in the car or at a restaurant with like little kids too. So there's something for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a fun keepsake that would be as they grew older.
Oh, for sure. Go back and read it later. Yeah, that would be good. Okay, so before we go, can you tell us where we can connect with you and then where we can get the book, all of the things? And I'll put it all in the show notes.
Great. So I'm JenniferDukesley.com. Jennifer Dukesley on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. And then I have an account now on Instagram called Stuff I'd Only Tell God, which is super fun, where we're talking about some of the prompts and just the value of journaling. And I help people walk through that process. So I'd love to see y'all there. And you can get the book wherever you like to buy books. Baker Bookhouse has it always on sale, 30% off. So that's a great place to get it, Baker Bookhouse. Otherwise, Amazon or any of your other favorite retailers.
Great. Okay. I'll point everyone to those places in the show notes. So thank you so much for being with me today. It was really, really fun. And I'm glad that I have a new, very dear friend. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you go and get a copy of Stuff I'd Only Tell God. I'm feeling really encouraged as a parent and a wannabe journaler because I think this book will really help me process some of my thoughts and get into some really great journaling habits. So go get a copy today. I have it linked in the show notes. You can find it easily. Thank you so much for listening. May God bless you this week. May you remember that you are loved by your community and by God. There are people who want to hear you, support you, and love you. And God, who made you and knows every hair on your head and every desire of your heart, wants you to be fully vulnerable with Him. So cry out to Him because He is here for you. Thank you so much for listening to the Christian Parenting Podcast. If you haven't subscribed, you can do that now, and that way you won't miss an episode. You can connect with us on Instagram at ChristianParenting_org and see more resources at ChristianParenting.org. And if you're a mom raising daughters, we have the perfect course for you. Visit cpguides.org to learn more about our Helping Moms Raise Confident Daughters online courses. And lastly, if you have enjoyed this podcast or other Christian parenting resources, please consider donating to this ministry. Visit christianparenting.org and click the donate button. Christian Parenting is 100% donor funded, and none of this would be possible without your help. We are so grateful for you. You're amazing. God bless you.